Welcome to Do You Approve This Groove, a project where two old friends dive headfirst into the 500 greatest albums of all time and beyond. We're going to relive them like we're trading the ultimate mixtape, one legendary record at a time. Each episode, we take a deep dive into iconic albums, rediscover their magic, and see if they hold up after all of these years. We'll rank each album and open up our hot takes for discussion. So whether you're hearing it for the first time or for the 100th, whether you agree or disagree, we're turning the volume up and bringing you along for the ride. In this episode, we count down albums 450 through 441 of the Rolling Stone greatest albums of all time. We explore the concept of maximalist and absurdist music with really interesting entries from Yes, Fiona Apple, and David Bowie. We play FMK Music Edition in a new recurring segment that's a lot of fun, and Kyle confesses his admiration for Britney Spears. I'm Tyler. He's still Kyle, even with his love for Britney Spears. Let's get to it.
All right, so we've gotten past the first 50 albums, and I feel like now we're like making progress in this list, right? So back again with another chunk of 10. What's
Humans
that?
like round numbers.
Yeah,
Humans like round numbers.
Yep.
So we're through 50.
Yeah,
Yep.
it feels like
on to the next.
It feels like a milestone. And I think we have an interesting concept that we're going to introduce this episode, right?
Yeah, so I know we talked a little bit offline. I've been thinking about like again, I think about music a lot. I've said this a couple times. I think about music a lot, and there's a game that one of my best friends and I play that we relate to music. In real life, it's called FMK. When we relate this to music, how this game works is the FMK essentially is the game where you pick three people, or out of three people, you have to choose which one you would have relations with, which ones you would marry and bring home to mom, and which one you would unalive. So that's the F, the M, and the K. When we play this game with music, we take the songs on the album or the group, whatever it is, right? And in this case, we'll do the album. We will pick the sexiest song, right? It could be the single that everyone knows, the absolute banger, the one that you can't explain why, but you just love it. We'll also pick the song that we would take home to mom, so to speak, right? The song we would marry. Maybe that's the one that's less known, less flashy, not played in the clubs, right? But it's the song that you absolutely fell in love with, and you know that that's never going to change. It's evergreen, right? You will never get tired of hearing that song. And then the K in this case is the song on this album that any producer should have gone, nah, we're good with that. Like this should be offed. This should not have it. So the way that this will work is we're going to surprise each other and throw each other into an FMK scenario. It could be for an album, maybe as we're talking about it, we'll realize, dude, he really likes this album. I'm going to make him pick. Right? What are his two favorite songs, the one that he wants, and what's one that he doesn't like and he'd get rid of? Or it could be, we could really try to screw each other, and you're going to have to choose from one of these albums like, oh God, I hated this and I have to pick, right? So it'll be a fun little exercise. We'll try to keep it short, because the time crunch will make it a little bit more interesting. Otherwise, we could sit here for a long time and figure this out. But I think this could expose some takes and could be fun. So in addition to our regular segments, we'll throw this game in there. So I'll pick one for you and you'll pick one for me.
Yeah, I like it. I think that's going to be fun.
Yeah, it should be a good time.
Yeah.
And I encourage anyone that's listening to consider music in this way, because it really, and especially with albums that you love, it feels like you're killing your children. Like, how could I? Oh God! And I guess if you don't think of music that way or have this relationship to music that way, I'm sorry. Maybe you could work on yourself and figure it out. But so with that game in mind, Kyle, what were your kind of first surface level thoughts on these 10 albums? Did we've talked about, we've had some strong groups, we've had some weaker groups. Like, what did you think about these?
As a whole, I think I'm mixed on some of these. Some of these albums, I think, are albums that I'm definitely going to come back to. There is an album on here that I'm excited to talk about that I thought I hated. Just my preconceived idea of this artist, I thought I hated. And then I listened to this album and I'm like, oh my God, this is good. There were other stuff on here that I just, meh. it was all right. I don't think there was anything on here that I ended up actually like despising. There's nothing that I have a strong opinion about, but it was kind of a mix of things that I really liked and stuff that I was just like, meh. What about you?
I felt listening to these albums that the thing that just kept coming to mind was that the term maximalist. Like there's a lot of albums in this that like swing big. I mean like lots of instrumentation, lots of attitude, um big swings production wise, conception wise. There's a lot of not straightforward stuff in this crop of albums.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. The word, actually, I kept coming back to the word absurd for some of these
Yeah,
albums because
yep.
there's just, especially lyrically, there's a lot of lyrical absurdity with these albums. But
Yeah,
Maximalist is a good one too. There was just a lot of sound, a lot of interesting sound this week.
absolutely. Well, let's start talking about them.
Hey, it's Kyle. Just jumping in real quick to ask, do you approve this groove? Let us know in the comments. Give us a quick thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and join the conversation.
The first album on our list today comes in at number 450 on Rolling Stone's greatest albums of all time. I don't know if you've heard of him, Kyle. I know you're kind of new to this game, but this is Paul McCartney, Sir Paul McCartney, I believe. Paul and Linda McCartney.
Yeah,
His
he had a
album
career before this album, right?
side project. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think his side project kind of
yeah.
took off. Yeah. Um, this album entitled Ram was released on May 17th, 1971. It comes through Columbia Records. It's labeled as rock, pop, indie pop, and psychedelia. 43 minutes and 15 seconds long. This is the only studio album credited to the husband and wife duo Paul McCartney. So you can find it like anywhere you listen to music. If you just search for Paul McCartney, it pops up. It's not its own separate, but this is the only one he did with his wife. And it's Paul's second album post Beatles. He had one that was called McCartney just before that. The other interesting thing I saw coming up in the recording of this is that he played all of the instruments himself on McCartney. And for this one, he auditioned instrumentalists to fill out the band, which seemed kind of fun. Did you read about this too?
Yeah, a little bit how they had like secret auditions in an attic and then in a basement or
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
Musicians thought they were coming to like get a gig recording a jingle or something like that, and then Paul McCartney opens the door and they're like, "Hey, I really want you to be on the album, man." And they're like, yes, awesome." So, which I think is just kind of a cool way to put a band together, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, what did you think of Ram?
I so this is where the absurd started for me with this album.
Hmm.
I Paul McCartney is an undisputed songwriting genius. There was so much that I loved about this album, and it was interesting to me. I'm kind of in my own personal time outside of this, doing a little bit of a deep dive into the Beatles again, just for my own sake. And I've been going back to the early Beatles stuff, like Please Please Me and Hard Day's Night, like some of the
Hmm.
early stuff, and seeing that this album was what 1972,
71.
71.
71.
That's less
Yeah,
than
71.
that's less than 10 years. That's less than 10 years after the first Beatles album came out. And the difference between what was on that first Beatles album and this is just so drastically different. And this is just so good. I really enjoyed a lot of this from a technical aspect, from a songwriting aspect. There's just it was so well mixed. It felt like it took up so much of that. We've talked about how the
Hmm.
sound in your earphones as you're listening, and it takes up that whole space. And thinking about how this is only just a couple of years after some of those albums like Jefferson Airship or Jefferson Airplane that we talked about, how it was
Hmm.
just hard panned in both directions and it just wasn't very interesting that way. This is a lot more subtle and nuanced with the way that was done that made it really interesting. Where it missed for me is just any sort of like emotional connection, because it was a bit absurd. Like I wrote down, I in my notes, I started writing down lyrics that I was noticing that were just ridiculous, and it kind of
Hmm.
got to the point where that makes interesting art, and maybe there's a deeper meaning to it that I'm just too dumb to see. But some of it's a bit ridiculous. It's a bit absurd. So that kind of took it away from like being a top-notch album for me, but I
Hmm.
really enjoyed listening to this.
Yeah, I would say that like, the lyrical stuff is a it's a barrier for me with some of the Beatles and for Paul McCartney in general because sometimes I feel like um they've got the melody in their head, so a lot of musicians will hum, and the humming will take on they'll find syllable structures in the humming, and then pretty soon they're just looking for some sounds, and then the words rhyme, and it's just kind of nonsense, like almost stream of consciousness nonsense. um sometimes I have a hard time with that. um Uncle Albert, Admiral Halsey, right, is I think it
Classic.
it was the one of the singles off of this one. And it was, what did it say? It was his first number one hit in America without the Beatles. So that's definitely a high flyer. I also have a question to pose to you.
Okay.
Did Paul McCartney invent hardcore? Because
Hardcore.
when you listen to Monkberry Moon Delight,
That's the other song that I have written down, and the lyrics of that song are one that I have written down. It's wild.
I don't care about the lyrics, right? He's doing harsh vocals on the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you caught a couple years ago there was a documentary, I think Apple did it, on, I think it was music but sound in general. And there was like 4 episodes. I don't remember the titles of all of them, but the one that stuck with me is the one that they did on think it was reverb, or essentially, or distortion. Now I'm not even remembering all of it, but anyways, their point was that around this time was when they started to get really creative with guitar pedals and effects, so that really grungy, crunchy, like distortion. That's what it was, distortion. They're talking about distortion. Those distortion effects really started to take place, and they put it in a way that I was fascinating to me. And they said that vocalists also started to play with distortion, but the way they did it was through not singing clean. They would sing with harsh vocals and yells and like those sorts of things. And they clearly drew that to that was a way to distort your voice in the same way that guitars and basses were moving, to make
Hmm.
it fuzzy, to make it sound different. And when I listened to this, I couldn't help but call back to that documentary and go, yeah, I could kind of see that with Paul trying to find a different sound in his voice and playing around with that. And I know some of the Beatles stuff they especially with like Sergeant Pepper's, right? They talk through like a megaphone effect, right? So it
Hmm.
sounds like they're far away. They've always kind of done some of those things, but again, I mean, maybe Paul McCartney invented hardcore.
It seems like there's a pretty logical sequence from the early '70s on through. Yeah,
Uh,
give him credit for that. He gets
yeah,
he gets credit for a lot of
yeah,
stuff in music. Give him that one too.
sure, why not? Long Haired Lady, I thought was a pretty good one. That one caught my ear. It was just a pretty song. I liked that one.
Yeah.
Anything else stick out to you about this one?
No, I Monkberry Moon Delight was definitely the biggest one that stuck out for me. It was a rocking song. Like I just really
Yeah, I thought it was
enjoyed
good.
listening to that.
Yeah, I liked the vocals. You could hear Linda McCartney in the vocals quite a bit. That was kind of cool. And what a nice little project to do.
Hmm.
Um, this album did not do well critically when it came out. And I think when you come right from the Beatles, people are going to question a lot of what you're doing, right? There's some natural disdain for like, oh God, how could the Beatles break up, and why couldn't you? Why aren't you giving us this? So it's a hard bar to follow up. Yeah, I mean it charted pretty well on the all over the place. I mean it charted well in the U.S. Like the critics didn't love it, but it still charted well. Like the name is going to carry a lot. It did really well. Um, all over the place. And then there was a reissue in 2012, remastered, and some other versions of songs that were added on. So it's definitely moved some units. It's platinum in the US, and platinum in Canada. So it's sold quite a bit. What did you score this one?
I gave it a 4. It's definitely something that I intend to go back to. Um, like I said, that lack of like strong lyrical connection kind of held it back from being that 5 for me, but I really
Mhm.
enjoyed it, and I'll definitely listen again.
Yeah, I'd give it a 3. This one, in my in our discussion about maximalist, absurdist kind of stuff, this one is harder to digest for me. Just because of the song structures and stuff like that. No shame on it because it is interesting. It's interesting to listen to and it's fun to get into that stuff. Um, but this isn't one that I'm like really diving into again. I give it a 3. All right, so that was Paul and Linda McCartney's album Ram at 450. All right, Kyle, and at 449 is the White Stripes Elephant. This album was released on April 1st, April Fool's Day of 2003, right before we graduated high school. It comes from Toe Rag Studios in London. Rock, alternative rock, blues rock, garage rock, punk blues. It's the fourth album from the American rock duo of the White Stripes. What did you think about Elephant?
I hate the White Stripes.
Really?
I I hate the White Stripes. I hate them for a different reason today than I hated them a week ago, though. I always
Oh, interesting.
yeah. I always thought I hated the White Stripes because I really don't like their singles. I don't like
Hmm.
from this album Seven Nation Army, the hardest button to button, other singles of I can tell that we're gonna be friends, like that kind of stuff. I can't stand it. I hate it. So I've always had it in my head that I don't like the White Stripes. I've never bothered. I've never really bothered with them because I would hear those songs and be like, "That's not something that I'm interested in," and just never listened to them. So I just was like, nah, not for me." And then I listened to this album and it was really freaking good. Like, this was really good. So now I hate them for being so good and me not knowing it for the last
That
25
took a
years.
turn.
Yeah. I
That took a
I
turn.
this was
Bef-
this was really good.
before you before you get into your thoughts, I would say I had a similar trajectory. I liked their singles. Like I thought they were catchy. Dead Leaves on the Dirty Ground is great. I
Oh
think
yeah.
Icky Thump is an under appreciated song. But I went into this thinking that they're just messy and I'm not gonna like it and it's not for me. But I also came around. So
Mhm.
please go on.
Well, and they always felt gimmicky to me. Like it always felt like them, their persona, the whatever it is that they are, were characters, and it was kind of a gimmick. And the songs, kind of in my head, fit that gimmick. But this album doesn't. This album rocks. And
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest parallel that I drew with this album was when we talked about the Strokes a few weeks ago, and you had brought up something about Jack White referencing the Strokes as being a big influence, and I absolutely,
Oh,
or not the Strokes, the Stooges. Yeah,
the Stooges. I was
Stooges.
gonna say
Yeah,
yeah, the Stooges.
we haven't talked about the Strokes. The Stooges.
But it's
Uh,
interesting you say that because I thought that I re-listened to some of their earlier stuff, right, from their first, not their first two albums. They weren't very commercially successful, but the one before this one, um, White Blood Cells, and that was from that era of the Strokes. I
right.
mean, we
Yeah.
talk about the Stooges, sure, but like that was that weird alternative rock stuff. But anyways, go
Yeah.
on.
No, I mean, I could hear that the proto punk sound of the Stooges being taken in its own new direction with this, and especially infusing the blues and the garage rock sort of thing. Like I really really enjoyed this album. Ball and Biscuit is an awesome song. Little Acorns is good stuff. I never really, and again, more going back to those singles, those songs that everybody knows from the White Stripes. Meg White was never much of a drummer in my head,
Same.
but then listening to this album, it just fits. Like her drumming, like
I
it's not like
love,
flashy and crazy, but it
right,
fits the music so well.
at the time when they were coming out, I hated the fact that she was irregular,
Hmm.
like in her pattern, right? It made it sound sloppy, and when you look at her play, especially back then, and I mean by all accounts, she's a really great drummer, right? But back then I was like, she looks like this is the first time she's ever sat down in front of a kit, right? Um, and there's a couple songs in their discography where like the kick is just a half beat too early, right? Or you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Which which jars me as the listener. Like I said, when I was younger, I thought that was a negative, and now that I'm older, I'm like, it gives a little character. Like
Yeah.
she has a signature sound, and I can appreciate it. So I had a similar takeaway in this. Like I ended up really liking this album also. Um, there's a couple of songs that I really enjoyed.
Songs,
Um,
songs that you would want to FMK
oh shit. Okay. Yes. 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 Okay.
on the spot. On the
Uh,
spot.
okay. So you mentioned Seven Nation Army. That is the worldwide smash that has been commanded in stadiums around the world. Like it, I don't think there's a person alive, or at least with an ear to Western civilization, that like doesn't know that song. That's my F. Like that's the sexy one. Like you're gonna take that one home. Yeah,
Hmm.
yep,
All
that's the
right.
one. That's fun. It's high energy. I like that one. My Mary song, my favorite song on this album is Ball and Biscuit.
Yeah.
I like that one. Just stuck with me. I love that like elementary style blues progression. The repeated lyrics. Like I love it, and it's a long one that builds a little bit. It's just a great one. So Ball and Biscuit's my pick for that one, and then Kill. mm, I mean, I just gave her props, and it's not that I don't like her vocals, but in the Cold Cold Night, like
Yeah.
that's probably the one that I would kill from this one. I think it's the weaker one. I get that it breaks up the album a little bit, sonically, vibe wise. But when I listen to this album, like I don't want to hear that one. I want to hear the loud bluesy,
Yeah.
like again that maximalist. His guitar stuff is just pretty wild.
Yeah.
Like and again, I thought that was just like a shtick on a couple songs. But when I revisited some of it, I was like, man, he's been doing that whistling, distorted guitar tone for a while. It's pretty cool, and I just respect him so much as a musician. Even when I really wasn't into them, I'm not going to say I'm a huge fan now. I certainly have more respect now, but in my disdain in my younger days for them, as kind of like there's just these two people, like I didn't get it. Now, like growing up and being around him and hearing more of what he's done and his outlook on stuff, I respect the hell out of him as a musician. I think he's amazing.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. My mind is completely changed on the White Stripes and Jack White himself. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Again, to the point where I checked out a bunch of their older stuff and the stuff that came after this just
Mm-hmm.
for fun. After this one, and I did not see that coming. This album did really, really well. Um, it's been on a bunch of critic rankings as far as best albums of the 2000s, top 20 albums of the decade. I mean, it's not surprising that it's on this list. It won the Grammy in 2004 for best alternative music and best rock song. Not surprising. Guess one that went with. Which song did the Grammys won a F? Seven eight.
Seven
Yeah,
Nation.
Seven
Yeah.
Nation Army.
Yeah.
It was nominated for a couple other awards. Um, I mean, that song, Seven Nation Army, has probably gone nuclear. Like that song itself. You were just
I,
talking to me offline this week about how many streams count as a sale
yeah.
towards platinum.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to see how many plays that song has on YouTube. I'm gonna look that up right now, actually. But this album charted really, really well. Um, yeah. Anything we missed on that one?
I don't think so. I went with a another four on this one again. This is definitely so, and
Yeah.
not just because I like this album, but because it makes me want to look into their other stuff as well. Like it's not that's a reflection of like I'm not just satisfied with this album. I like this album so much that I'm gonna seek out more of their stuff now.
Yeah, I would give this one a four. For very all the reasons we talked about. Um, it's a really really good one. All right, so I'm looking at um YouTube.
I have it pulled up on YouTube Music.
Yeah, I can't set when it's full screen right now, and I can't see how many. It has 5.5 million likes. Um,
I'm showing 1.1 billion plays.
Holy shit!
I mean, you can't go to a middle
One
school volleyball game without hearing Seven Nation Army.
right?
Like it's playing.
Yeah, yes, yes. And as it should. Plus that music video. Now that I'm just seeing it up, like it's just cool. Like, and I've said it before. I think back then I just like poo-pooed them as like, oh, these are like this weird garage stuff, and now I'm just like, no, this shit is cool. Like, I dig it.
Yeah.
Shout out White Stripes. That was the White Stripes record Elephant in at 449. Otis Redding's Complete and Unbelievable is the 448th greatest album of all time, according to Rolling Stone. The full title is Complete and Unbelievable, The Otis Redding Dictionary of Soul. It was released in October of 1966 on Volt and Atco Records, produced by Jim Stewart, 36 minutes and 15 seconds long. So the Complete and Unbelievable Dictionary of Soul fits within 36 minutes and 15 seconds. This is his fifth studio album. And his last studio album released for his death. Kyle, you and I were just talking. He died in a plane crash shortly after the release of this album. So he had a prodigious but short career. What were your thoughts on the great Otis Redding? I know how you feel about Motown. How'd you feel about that soul
Oh,
sound?
this was good. This was good. I really
Uh
actually
huh.
I enjoyed this a lot. And coming into this, I think my knowledge of Otis Redding was Dock of the Bay, and
Uh
that's
huh.
it. Which then seeing that he died at 26, I never when I listened to Dock of the Bay, I never picture like a 20 something year old guy singing that. I never pictured that. So it kind of put a
Now
different
that you mention it, yeah, I never considered it, but now having considered, it, I'm like, yeah, that seems like this is like a 40-year-old like
somebody with like
thinking
some
of singing of yesteryear.
yeah, like
Yeah,
hardship, life experience,
yeah.
nostalgic looking back sort of thing. Yeah. Which also interestingly, that was the first, I think it was like the first ever song to posthumously win a Grammy or something. Oh, I forget
No
exactly, but
kidding.
yeah, because it came out like just after he died. But anyway, but this
Hmm.
album in particular, I really enjoyed it.
Nice.
I found myself listening to the piano and the keyboards a lot on this because they were just
Hmm.
funky and fun to listen to all throughout. Like Tennessee Waltz, I think was probably my favorite song on this album. Um,
Hmm.
but I just every single song I kept going back to that the piano, the keyboards going on,
Hmm.
and so I got curious and I looked it up. Do you know who the keyboard pianist was on this?
No, was it
Isaac
Ray Charles?
Isaac Hayes.
No kidding.
Isaac Hayes was the pianist for Otis Redding, and I think for a
Hmm.
while before his death, yeah. So long before he was chef on South Park, because that's the only other thing he's known
Right.
for.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no,
Oh, that's cool.
I really enjoyed this. It had a lot going on. My Lover's Prayer was a song that I really liked that I connected with. Um, it was just it was it, I don't know what makes this different from a lot of the other stuff that I haven't enjoyed that's kind of in this same genre, like that Motown thing that I haven't really had a whole lot of connection with. This to me seemed a little different. This to me seemed like a live take of a recording. And it just
Hmm.
felt alive. Not necessarily live, like a live
Hmm.
recording, but it felt alive. And there was just a lot of heart put into it that I really enjoyed.
Um, I it's funny. I would have expected you to have a similar take on this as the other sort of Motown era stuff, but I think the soul version, like I think you called it out correctly with the piano, right? The
Hmm.
difference between the soul slash gospel sound versus the Motown is the really that predominant piano that's leading stuff through there.
And that has a little bit of
So when
a funk to it. Like that
yeah,
piano,
yeah,
it had a little bit of attitude to it. I think is maybe what I
and
liked.
you get the horns in there adding
Hmm.
color, and it's a lot of fun. Um, but I would have thought that you would have been lukewarm on this, and I would have carried the day. Instead, it's the other way around. I'm kind of lukewarm on this one. Um, I think the reason is because when I heard this, my mind got drawn to other songs within that little subgenre that I liked more. And I'm gonna plug our segment towards the end. I got one better. Like this is one that I've got one better for. And I had a lot of fun with that one this weekend. I'll tell that story later. But sticking to this one, th- really stuck out. Try a little tenderness is a great one, but I can't help but I don't know if you know this. This is the song that Nuke Lelouch sang in the back of the bus in Bull Durham. Like he's and Kevin Costner is yelling at him like about what the actual lyrics are. So it's just funny to me. And that song in and of itself was first recorded in 1932. It was covered by Otis Redding. He's got the most famous version of it. Um, but it's just funny to me to hear that one. The others I enjoyed, but it didn't stick with me. And like I said, it was because there were others that I was drawn to more from other artists, which is not. Dock of the Bay is a great one. That's another interesting one where we talked about last week, where I'm willing to bet that this is Otis's only album on the list. I'm not sure. Um, but this could be like Dock of the Bay is an amazing song and it should be on this list. And they're like, yeah, but I mean, the album it was on wasn't that great, but let's show respect to the artist and we'll put his best album on there as a sort of a time capsule of his contribution. Yeah, what'd you give this one?
Uh, 3.5. 3.5. Which I
Hmm.
think is the best
Give
I've
this,
given from anything in this kind of genre so far.
yeah, I'd give this one a three. I'd give this one a three. So that stacks up and matches up with kind of what we were thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it had a lot of great reception. Liked it. I was just talking about kind of how nothing really stuck out, but um, My Little Tenderness was voted on a list of best songs. Like I think I just saw that it's on Rolling Stone's list of the 500 best songs. Um, so this album is in pretty high regard, and I do like the cover. If I know that
Yeah.
this is not a very visual medium that we're doing, but the cover is like this very 60s board game era like graphic of a very crude looking book that's labeled as the dictionary, right? This is the Dictionary of Soul. And then Otis is just propped up against it with his like graduation cap on, like Scholar of Soul. It's just cheesy and fun. I thought that was pretty good
Mm-hmm.
with the my underneath it.
Yeah. Yeah.
My. Yeah. So yeah, it was a fun one to listen to. But I think there's some others that are better in this genre. So we'll talk about those later. All set?
I think so.
That was Otis Redding.
Yeah.
We did it, Otis. Otis Redding in at 448. Our next album is from Bad Bunny, X100 Pray, or which I've just found out is a Spanish abbreviation for Por Siempre, which means forever. Um, Bad Bunny's album, released on Christmas Eve 2018. It is Latin trap, reggaeton, alternative reggaeton, pop rap, hip hop. 53 minutes and 50 seconds. This is a Spanish language album. I think most people know who Bad Bunny is, or they've seen him. He's been on SNL. Like he's pretty prodigious. Like he's been around. I mean, he's a very charming guy, and I actually like him as a performer in general. He's funny. Like he's got a lot. He brings a lot to the table. I'm going to start this one off. Unfortunately for this album, he brought nothing to the table for me. And I realized upon further examination, it's just I don't think I like trap music. Um, the mumbled sung like rhymes. I remembered as I was listening to this, I remember thinking like his delivery sounds a lot like Lil Yachty, like back in the day, like some of those guys from that mid-teen um, mumble rap stuff. Um, I didn't like it. The music didn't really catch me. I don't I came in hot off the intro, right? This is, like I said, this is the 447th best album of all time. And spoiler alert, he's got another one on the list ahead, not this episode, but later.
Like
I
soon.
I, I don't get it. Now, and again, I will recognize that maybe the lyrics um in Spanish, if I understood them, would would give me a lot more. And maybe shame on me for not reading more into why people like this album so much. Um, but as a piece that I encountered and listened to, I didn't care for it very much. What do you think?
Ditto. I so
Yeah.
um a couple caveats. Again, our standard thing of saying, we aren't necessarily reviewing these albums, we're reacting to them from our own personal perspectives. Uh, Another caveat, I'm wrong about this album. Like I have to be wrong
Sure.
about the
Yeah.
I have to
Right.
be wrong about this. Because this is also listed as one of the top, it's like and it's in the top 100 of the greatest debut albums of all time. It's like number 50. Like
Oh, that.
it's like on that list, like solidly on the list of the greatest debut albums of all time. But I didn't like it. Like and it's the
Yeah, I
same thing.
didn't.
Like I think I think if we were to put the time and effort into understanding the full context of every album that we listen to on this list, our reactions might be different for a lot of the things that we don't respond positively to. But I mean, we can't really do that. We don't have time in our lives to do all of the research to gather all the context to understand exactly where every single one of these albums was coming from. And the same thing, not being a fluent Spanish speaker, I didn't really dive into what these lyrics were. And so to me, it was just a driving, relentless assault on my ears. Like I just didn't, I didn't. And again, I'm wrong. I'm
Right.
wrong.
Yeah.
I'm
I
wrong.
acknowledge that. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is our take is wrong.
Yeah.
Like, yep. I'll call it out too.
But
I get it.
speaking
But
just
for us,
from a personal reaction to having sat down and listened to this album, no thanks.
yeah, 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 yeah. As you were saying that, I was reading kind of what the critical reception was. Um, this I'm a little fuzzy on how they do this, but Metacritic is kind of like a it's a Metacritic, right? So they bring a whole bunch of critics together in their reviews, and this one indicates universal acclaim for this album. And one of the things that was praised, or a couple of things that were praised, was his off kilter creativity, saying that he is part of the current pop landscape, but like adjacent to it also by bringing in stuff that we just don't have references for. They talk about um, well, pop punk, sure, but Andean music, Dominican dembo, and windswept '80s stadium rock. Right, I didn't catch on to those when I listened to it, and I'm not sure that I would anyways. Um, so I that in mind, I could see in a similar way that well, like Paul McCartney we talked about, right? It brings in different instrumentation and a couple different musicians, and it changes the color of this album enough where critics are like, "Wow, this is different. This is remarkable." Right? Like this is a lot different than what's going on, and therefore they really respect it and appreciate it. Sure, maybe part of the problem is it's just too recent for me. Like I hear it and I don't recognize those differences, and I also don't recognize it being any different than stuff that I have already heard, and it, I don't get it.
Yeah.
But like I said, I do like him. I think he's funny.
Yeah. There's nothing to me. I think I would agree with that recency bias idea of it, because there's nothing about this album that separates it from a whole lot of other stuff that kind of sounds just the same to me, to my ears. Again, I'm wrong, but
Right,
yeah.
right. I mean, let's just look at what we've talked about already. Like this episode, according to the list, this is and over 500. The things that separate them would be minuscule anyways.
Hmm.
But according to this list, this is a better album than Paul McCartney, The White Stripes, and Otis Redding. It's also, in fairness, according to this list, a better album than Selena, a better album than Manu Chao, which we didn't really care for. I'm trying to think of like even the other Spanish language albums that were on here. Um, Shakira,
Shakira.
like
Yeah.
it's a better album than that according to the list. Um, and there were other albums that I just listed, those Spanish speaking albums that like we liked better than this one. So I really do think for me it comes down to the music, and I just don't. The music just doesn't do it for me. And like you said, we're wrong.
Hmm. We admit it.
Wrong. Well, won't be the first time.
No.
Won't be the last time. Yeah. So I gave this one a 2. I don't need to hear this one again. I'm good.
I gave it a 1. Like I'll actively avoid listening to
Yeah.
this.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, we beat it up badly enough. That was Bad Bunny's X100 Prey, uh, or Por Siempre, and at 447. The 446th greatest album of all time is from Alice Coltrane featuring Pharoah Sanders. Oh, I realize now that I have to try to pronounce it. Um, Journey in Satchidananda. I think I actually did all right. Journey in Satchidananda. This album was released in February of 1971 through Impulse with an exclamation point. There we go. From Alice Coltrane, who was married to. Do you know who she was married to?
John Coltrane?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. In fact, this album is an ode. There's a song, an ode to him. She's an interesting cat. Did you read about her at all?
No, not at all.
Okay. So she's a pianist and a harpist, which we'll talk about, I'm sure. Born in 1937, passed away in 2007. She's also known as Turiya, which is her Hindu name. She adopted Hinduism and became a Hindu spiritual leader. And her career had an arc to it in that she was performing a lot of music, and then she became a spiritual leader, and the music kind of went on the wayside. She went more of the spiritual route, which I thought was pretty cool. We haven't really heard that story before. I don't know much about honestly. I don't know much about John Coltrane other than I think he's going to be on the list later. Um, but yeah, that's kind of her story. I would love to be able to pronounce her full name as it's written, but there's no chance I'm going to be able to do that. Kyle, what did you think of this one?
Okay. So I've had a big jazz kick in the last like year or 2 years. And so this scratched a little bit of an itch for me, especially like kind of that transition from, more classical jazz towards that more modal jazz thing, which is kind of what I like now, especially with modern jazz stuff. And this was definitely getting into that kind of realm of things. So I enjoyed listening to this. To me though, I kept going back to that idea of a museum piece for this album. I
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
enjoyed it. I liked it. I thought there was a lot there. This is another one, kind of like the Paul McCartney album, that it just had a lot going on. My biggest problem with it though was the mix of the album. I kept feeling like I kept feeling like I was supposed to be listening to the piano or the harp, which I could hear, but they were so low in the mix for me that it was hard to keep focused on them. And the bass just kept pulling me to listening to that. And the bass
Hmm.
there was nothing wrong with it. There was nothing bad about it, but it wasn't what was interesting about this album. The bass just kind of went along and actually kind of made some of the songs feel like they were just kind of drawn out and slow and not.
That's jazz, baby.
Yeah, but it's really not. I mean, there's a lot of really
No, I know what you
exciting
mean.
stuff, and I actually re-listened to a couple of songs on here just to kind of go back and try again to focus on what was supposed to be carrying the melody of the songs with the piano and harp. And there, I mean, there's some really interesting and cool, fun stuff going on there, but it just kind of lacked definition for me. Um,
I would agree with that part. Yeah, 100%.
yeah,
That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
yeah. And
And
I mean,
I'm not a jazz aficionado. Like I want to like jazz in that like I respect it and the art form and the musicianship behind it. I just it's not accessible to me. I haven't figured out how to really get into it yet. Um, so when you say that's not definable, I go, yep, that makes total sense to me because especially honestly, I'd never heard a harp in jazz music before. And far be it for me to criticize anyone's harp playing. I still don't understand how. I mean, I know how harp works, but I don't get how, the way it was played, it sounded like open tuning on a guitar with like 50 strings and just a glissando right down the whole thing and back, and it was just this wave of sound over and over again. It's not a harp record where there's like a melody played on individual strings. And plus, there's I forget which instrument it is. I looked it up at the time. I think it's the tanpura, which is a an Indian. I think that's what it is because I think I know what an oud is, and I don't think it's that. I think it's the tanpura, but it creates that drone sound in some
yeah,
of them,
yep,
like that dirge sound.
yep,
Um,
yep.
which I think we'll cut it in, but I think a lot of people would recognize that as a featured sound in much Indian music, traditional Indian music. So there was that droning and dirge sound going throughout some of these, plus the sort of I don't know what the term is, but it reminds me of a glissando, right? Just this up and down sound along the harp strings. Um, what was the other guy's name? Pharoah Sanders is the saxophone player on this, and I thought he added the most structure to it. I liked his contributions to
Mm-hmm.
it because without it, really is kind of a quiet piano and bass jazz with those other instruments added in, that just going on in an unrecognizable sort of movement.
Mm-hmm.
And then I like the saxophone stuff. Yeah. Yeah, this album didn't do a lot for me. Would you score it?
Three, uh, primarily because I do see it as, you know, kind of an early attempt at things that I do actually really like now. So I respect it for that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I'm really interested to talk to my brother-in-law about this one because he's a really great like woodwind player with a degree in music that I'm there's no doubt he knows this album. I would love to hear what his take is on it just as a musician in general. But I did see that an NPR music critic for NPR said almost 50 years after this album was released, the album remains a vision of universal healing, spiritual self-preservation in times of trouble, and the God that appears when you seek her out. I'm like, man, okay, good for you, because I'm glad you have that experience. Like this just was sound
Yeah.
and music.
Yeah. I even tried with this to like very specifically set aside time to just sit and listen to this
Mm-hmm.
album, and it still didn't pull me in like that.
I gave it a shot too. Yep, I feel like I gave it a fair shot. Yeah. All right, that was Alice Coltrane featuring Pharoah Sanders' Journey to Satchidananda in at 446. All right, Kyle, we are halfway through this group of 10. This is the part in the episode where we delve away from this task and this project and talk briefly about what else caught our ear, what other things we were checking out this week. What did you listen to this week?
I've been actually, I think this was kicked off by listening to Paul McCartney early on this list because I've been diving back into
Mhm.
the Beatles, and I did that particularly because, like I talked about when we talked about Paul McCartney a few minutes ago, the difference between his stuff that he was doing at that point in the early 70s versus where the Beatles were just, you know, 8 or 10 years before that is so drastically different. And it's always been interesting to me to think about the difference between where the Beatles ended and where they began because they're very, very different. But I've never really sat down and made an effort to listen through their discography, I don't even know, like some of those earlier albums, I don't even know if I've ever actually sat down and listened to Please Please Me
Right.
from start to finish, or, Hard Day's Night from start to finish. And so I
Hmm.
did this week. And I'm working my way through their entire discography just as a personal thing to want to do. So I've been listening to some Beatles, which, yeah, it's been nice. Actually, I've kind of
Right.
enjoyed it.
For me, there's an Instagram account. Um, name is Anna Lapwood. I don't know if you've ever seen her. She's an organist at like I think it's the Prince Albert Hall, I think is what it's called in the UK. It's a giant organ in this concert hall. Oh, well, I don't know the history. It could be a church that is a concert hall, or it has always been a concert hall with an organ. Anyways, she does some really cool stuff where she gives you a behind the scenes look at her practicing the organ, what it looks like, how it works, and she's really fun. She posted a video of herself performing with Aurora. I don't know if you know who Aurora is. She's a Norwegian musician. Um, did your daughter get into Frozen too?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Aurora is the voice of the spirit. Like
Uh,
that's she sings that.
mm-hmm.
She's very eccentric. Like Bjork. Maybe just Bjork toned down a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, she has this song called "The Seed," right? And the song is it's catchy. It's a critique of capitalism and its impact on the on pollution and nature and stuff like that, right? Just like every good Norwegian should be thinking about and singing about. Love it. It's a catchy song. I played this for my daughters and they were into it. But anyways, the reason this one sticks out to me is because Anna posted a video of her playing the organ at the climax of this song, and the joy on her face is so great. And she posted like the video. It doesn't have sound of her talking or anything. It's literally just her playing, and you can see the lights behind her, but you can't see the stage. And she says in the caption, like, she goes, "I don't know how to describe it. The best way is it feels like flying." Right? Like she's playing the climax of the song on this giant organ that's just resonating the whole room in this very emotional part of the song. And I was like, that's what music's about, man, right? Like to have that. So it exists on music platforms and audio, but you can also see a version of it performed. You don't see Anna playing in that, but you can see the organ and stuff like that. So I checked out The Seed by Aurora and Anna Lapwood, featuring Anna Lapwood. I thought it was really cool. You should check it out.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
So that's what we were listening to. Let's get back to it. In at 4:45 is the band Yes's album Close to the Edge. Kyle, this was released on September 8th, 1972, from Atlantic Records. This is a 37-minute, 51-second album with technically only 3 songs. We'll talk about that. This is the 5th studio album by the English progressive rock band Yes. Um, this is very clearly progressive rock, which I will say was interesting as a fan of some progressive rock that crossed over into the genres I like. It was cool to kind of check this one out. Um, I mean, as a Coheed and Cambria fan, I'm going to give any song that has movements listed in Roman numerals. I'm going to give it a shot.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get into it. I'm going to check it out. I'll let it wash over me. I will check it out. What did you think of Close to the Edge from Yes?
So I think I came at this album from a slightly different perspective because I listened to this right after listening to the Alice Coltrane album. And so to me,
Hmm.
it was kind of a really interesting juxtaposition between the two. Listening to them back to back like that, because that Alice Coltrane album to me felt like it struggled to find a structure. And then this
Mm-hmm.
album came in and pushed the boundaries, which is, I've talked about before, something that I really like is music that pushes the boundaries of the conventions of music and the standard formula of music. And this really pushed those boundaries, but still had a structure to it.
Hmm.
This album, to me, I'm always interested in the balance between something being complicated and being complex. Where complicated is like it's unnecessarily too much, and complex is like there's a lot going on, but it has depth and interest and intention behind it. And to me, this really kind of
Hmm.
walks that line between the two. The only time that I feel like it maybe steps over into being unnecessarily complicated is in the lengths of the songs. And
Right.
I'm not averse to long songs. Like I like Godspeed. I love Godspeed. Like
Hmm.
that's fantastic. And I mean, they'll have songs that are 26 minutes long. So I'm not averse to long songs, but at times in this, what you're listening to by the end of it doesn't really relate to what you were listening to at the beginning of it. Like to me, there was
Right.
not really a reason that it needed to be one long song as opposed to however many different movements that was, just a few separate songs. So it did kind of veer into that complicated more than complex realm for me.
Hmm.
But being a prog fan, a lot of the stuff that I enjoy listening to now, more contemporary stuff, very clearly influenced by this. Um, I enjoyed it overall. There's just some interesting ways that I approached it. I think it's just interesting comparisons that I was pulling from as I was listening to it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I'm trying to figure out how to put this, right? Like the first song, Close to the Edge, right, has five movements in it at 18 minutes long. Like you said, there's nothing that, for the amount of times I listened to it, that specifically tied it all together, nor really separated it. I mean, it could have very easily just been five different tracks. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
and I don't think it takes away anything, even if it was.
no, no, and that's the thing for me is when you think about something that is that long, that is separated into movements. Usually, there's some sort of unifying theme, whether it's a lyrical theme or a melody that ties it
Hmm.
together. And maybe there is, and I just missed it. But to me,
Hmm.
I didn't pick up on something that ties all of those movements together.
Yeah. When I saw this on the list, I was hoping this was the album with Roundabout on it because Roundabout I definitely have thoughts on, and those lyrics are just wild and hilarious if you just look at them objectively. That song is not on this one. Um, Apparently this is a guitarists rank this album as being very high. Um, I the only you can't even call it a song. The part that I gravitated to was the third movement of the first song, which is I Get Up, I Get Down, because it was just different and it had enough melody to catch my eye and kind of anchor me in. I enjoyed that one a little bit. The other parts were just sound washing over me. Um, I it didn't really resonate a lot with me. But this album in general has been on a lot of lists as some of the best stuff for quite a while. Um, it did chart. This is crazy to me. I mean, it charted at number three on the Billboard 200.
Wow.
It, right, and
Hmm.
I look at it, and obviously no radio was playing the thing in its entirety, right?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure out what parts, because it would have had to have had radio play to get on that chart. It's not going just on album sales, I'm assuming.
No, I mean, were they just
Um,
riding the success of Roundabout? I mean,
Maybe. Close to the Edge became the band's greatest commercial success at the time of release, reaching number four in the UK, number three in the US, where it sold over a million copies. So I'm actually surprised to hear this. I really thought that this would have been an album that music lovers put on because of its contributions to prog rock, um, I'll always get down with a recognizable but strange time signature that's just fun to try to figure out and count to. I think this one was in 12/8 at points, which was just kind of fun to count.
Hmm.
Um, the music nerd in me loves that stuff. But what do you got?
I went with a, what did I give it, 3? I mean,
Yeah.
it was interesting to listen to. I enjoyed it. Kind of the same, like it did become just you know, it just washed over me eventually. I tried hard to focus and do the same thing, kind of
Mhm.
count the time as I was going and keep me interested in it. Eventually it just kind of just blended together and washed over me. But I mean I generally enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'd give this one a 2.5 maybe if I'm being kind. Like, I don't think I need to check this out again. I would love a version that is broken down with the pieces in different tracks, just to be able to get access them a little bit better. So yeah, I don't really have much else for this one. It
Nope.
was okay. Again, just like others, I respect them as musicians because clearly they are musicians at the tops of their game, doing some really great stuff.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it didn't do it for me. That was Close to the Edge by Yes at 4:45. The next album on the list is Fiona Apple's Extraordinary Machine at 444. This is Fiona Apple's third studio album, released on Epic Records on October 4th of 2005. It is 50 minutes and 34 seconds long, tagged as a genre of art pop. It is released through Epic and Clean Slate. Kyle, we haven't talked about this, and shame on me for not thinking about this. We just finished up talking about Yes. That carried on our themes, my theme of maximalist album. This was also a maximalist album.
Big
Um,
time.
this is not an easy listen, and I mean that like without like not saying that it's bad. Like this, man, she loves minor and weird chords and just throwing them in there. And this is a very jazzy chord album, like with pop sensibilities to it. What did you think of this one?
I For all of those reasons I really liked it.
I knew you would.
This is up my alley. This is up my alley. So I've talked a little bit before about how there was a good like 15-year chunk of time where I really didn't listen to much music. But there were a few things in that period that I did kind of latch on to and listen to a bit of. And Fiona Apple was one of them. Not this album, though. She had an album that came out in 2020, I think. It was called Fetch the Bolt Cutters, which I just, at the time, I heard and I latched onto it and I really enjoyed it. And so I was excited to come back and listen to this. And I got a lot out of this album. Um, it reminded me in a lot of ways of that Paul McCartney album from earlier, just for the wide range of sounds that are in there. Um, the Paul McCartney album, I think, had a lot more structure to the songs, whereas this was a little bit more free flowing, which I kind of liked. Um, but her voice, man, like her voice is just so good. There's just something about her approach to it's not even that she has a good voice. It's that her approach to singing as an act, as a thing that she does is just super interesting to me. There are times when it has kind of like this spoken quality to it, but then she goes into different registers and is just straight singing and belting it out, and I love it. And again, also kind of similar to the Paul McCartney album, lyrically it's a bit absurd.
Mm-hmm.
And I as somebody who does look to connect to lyrics in music, just like I said with the Paul McCartney album, the lack of really much sense being made for me personally with the lyrics kind of was a drawback. But there was just so many sounds in this album. It was stuffed full of sounds, and it was interesting to listen to. And it's been interesting over the last couple of days to go back and re-listen to it and find, I mean, every time just find something new to point out. I really
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed this album a lot. We texted about this album and you pointed something out about this album that I'm gonna hold off and let you talk about if you do. If you don't, I'll come back to it. But there was something about it that I you made a really good point. So I'll let you talk if you.
What's funny is that I know I texted you when I was getting groceries listening to this in Wegmans. So honestly, I don't remember what I texted you.
Okay.
So great. You bring it up in a second. Maybe I'll hit on it, but yeah, I don't have a lot to add to what you said. I it was an interesting listen. Um, for me personally, none of it stuck with me other than as a whole, right? Thinking about it holistically, like again, I can appreciate her approach to music. You were talking about her vocals, and as you were explaining that, the visual that I got in my head was the difference between like someone doing, I don't know, classical ballet, right, which is very controlled movements and technique is everything, and it's supposed to be literally on point, right? That's where we get the term on point from. Um, to someone doing like more contemporary freestyle dancing that's just as beautiful, right? I don't mean like doing some hip hop dancing next to it. That's too stark of a difference, but that's just beautiful, but like free, right? Where ballet is controlled and prescribed, someone else dancing in a free interpretive way is just free and flowing. I would say like that's the best analogy I can think of when thinking about this album. Like her vocal style and music in general is just free flowing. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's just comes in waves. What did I text you about?
You had said that this album is front heavy, which again after
Yes.
listening back to it again, I agree with that. The back to me, probably the back third of this album does kind of lose a little bit of interest for me, but
Yeah.
yeah, definitely.
I'm recalling now, and text because my family we make a grocery list. We buy all of the groceries on Saturday or Sunday for the whole week. We've got our meal plan. We go and we get everything. So when we go to Wegmans, it takes me an hour to work my way through and get everything. This album is just under an hour, so I listened to the whole thing from start to finish while I was grocery shopping. So I had the same sensory input, doing the same amount of focus the whole time. And I recall now thinking like I really enjoyed the first parts, but by the end of it, it got away from me, and I think I cared less. And I don't think the songs were quite as interesting,
Hmm.
not as dynamic. The
Hmm.
songs weren't as dynamic on the second half. Extraordinary Machine is just a great one. I mean, as a title track should be. But then by the time you get to the end, it just kind of washed away.
Yeah, I ended up looking into this album. There's a pretty interesting story with the production of this album and having it had been recorded, but then shelved and then
Hmm.
re-recorded, and there was a lot going on. So there ended up being a lot of time between her previous album and this one. And so as I was
Hmm.
looking into this album, I found this quote that was just it was really interesting to think about the big like pop singers of that time were. And so I saw this quote that a critic had said that her first music since 1999 makes Nora Jones, Joss Stone, and Alicia Keys and other pretenders sound like American Idol rejects. That's
Oh
a
shit!
big
Shots
statement.
fired.
Yeah, that's a big statement to say that it makes Nora
Fired.
Jones, Alicia Keys sound like American Idol rejects. Like that's a big
Interesting.
statement.
I mean, clearly, I wouldn't go that far. Um, what'd you score this one?
Three and a half. Three and a half. That lack of connection to the lyrics and then
Yeah,
the kind of slower back end of it brought it down a little bit.
yeah. This one a three, which on my scale is it's okay. It's not offensive. There are parts that I liked that were just okay, but yeah, not something I'd come back to very much. This isn't a song I wouldn't play these songs from like my daughter.
Yeah.
I wouldn't. I wouldn't do that. Not because of content wise. Just, I know she won't grab. She's gonna have to find this on her own, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna play this for her and expect her to kind of get into it. So, yeah. That was Fiona Apple's Extraordinary Machine at 4:44. All right, Kyle. In at 443 is David Bowie's Scary Monsters and Super Creeps. This album was released on September 12th, 1980. It's labeled as art rock, new wave, and post punk. I'm not really sure where that one comes from. It's 45 minutes and 30 seconds long on RCA Records. This is his 14th studio album. This is his first album following what's known as his Berlin trilogy, where he put out like really great albums with really great singles and kind of cemented his place in music in the late 70s. But this was kind of his transition from the end of that era slash project into his next sort of step. It comes after um, his Space Oddity saga with Major Tom. It comes after that part. And I'm interested to hear kind of where you place this in the Rolodex of music history and what your thoughts were. What did you think of this one? Thumbs down. This is an audio.
Yeah,
This is an audio medium.
for the audio listeners not watching
Yeah,
on YouTube, I was giving a thumbs down.
it was an enthusiastic thumbs down from Kyle.
I
Tell me more.
I'm not well versed in David Bowie and am still, despite not liking this album, I'm eager to become more well versed in David Bowie. This wasn't a good introduction for me. I mean, I know his big hits, I know his bigger songs, but beyond that, I've never like sat down and listened to a David Bowie album until this, and this didn't do it for me. I think this kind of like I talked about listening to Alice Coltrane followed directly by Yes. I listened to this pretty much immediately after listening to that Fiona Apple album. And the Fiona Apple album feels like a more refined version of this. This has a lot of the same elements of having a lot going on sonically, but to me it just didn't work personally. Right from the very first song, like, was the guitar out of tune on purpose? Or I almost couldn't listen to it because and I can only, I mean, calling it art rock, I can only suppose that was an intentional choice. But the guitar in the very first song was just out of tune, and it was like it was hard to listen to. I didn't care for his voice throughout the whole thing. There's no movement in the songs. Like the songs I think could be interesting with as much as going on in each of them, but there's no flow to the songs. Each song just drives forward from beginning to end. And there's a lot going on sonically, but because it's just constantly driving forward, it feels monotonous. So I didn't, I still, I'm not writing David Bowie off because of this album, but
Right.
I didn't care for it.
One of the things I noticed at a couple different parts in the album is it felt like it was speeding up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Specifically on the song "Fashion," it starts off with it's not a click track. It's not a metronome, but there's some form. It's almost like the sound that you'd get when you press like the top of a can, like like a mason jar,
Yep.
like that pop sound,
Yep.
just muffled a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And what was interesting, and I love this phenomenon, when you hear it in your head, you establish it's on the downbeat because that's what you hear, right? And then when the music kicks in, they shifted the music, or they came in the music on the upbeat, or no, they made the music come in on what is their downbeat, so that sound became the upbeat. And as you know, when you play in a band, if a very universal sound is on the upbeat, it makes everybody feel like they're speeding up.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's just this jerk back
Yeah.
to there, which is why like those punk songs. I think of your bands in the old day. Like, man, when you're hitting that snare on that upbeat, just going fast, it's just like all of a sudden you're like running away.
Yeah. Yep.
With how fast the song is going. So I don't know. I was trying really hard to listen to it and see if there were parts where it came back and then if it got faster. But I enjoyed that part. When I listened to Teenage Wildlife, it's the sixth track.
Mm-hmm. I had
I
that one written down
immediately
too.
thought, I immediately thought this is either the precursor to Heroes or they rang that rag one more time to see if they it sounds like a twin sister or a companion song to Heroes, just in the tone of it, in and everything about it. I mean, the melody, not so much the vocal melody, but the chord progression and that sort of thing. I immediately went and looked, like, when did Heroes come out, and it came out before this, so I thought that was interesting. um but that was it's my favorite song on the album, because in my mind, as I listened to it, I was like, this is, in my mind, what I like about David Bowie. Like, that chorus finishes and then the music comes back in and like almost refreshes it and it carries it for me. The chorus I could so, but man, when the music comes back in, I really liked that sound. I like that. But as a whole, I didn't care for this one. I couldn't find singles. I mean, I can. Ashes to Ashes was the first single on this one, which I thought was interesting. At the time, it was the most expensive music video ever made.
Hmm.
Um, when I listened to this, if I went in totally blind without the information, I wouldn't identify a single, not one
No.
that caught my ear.
Right. Yeah, not one that you would say
Which is,
like, "Oh yeah, if I was the producer, I would want, or if I was the label, I would want this to be out there in front of people."
yeah,
Meh.
yeah. I won't do it to you, but this would be an interesting one to FMK, because like, which song are you gonna pick?
Yeah.
Which two songs are you gonna pick as ones that really caught your eye? I won't do it to you. That's a fun thought experiment, but that would be really hard, and or easy, because it's like, I don't care. If I have to pick out of this list, like, I really don't have a
Yeah.
preference, you know.
Any one song is as
Um,
good as another.
yeah, so I'm gonna put that card back in my holster. There, we'll play that. Um, yeah, what'd you score this one?
Oh, I went with a 2. Um,
Yeah, I'd give this one a 2.
yeah.
I agree.
I'm still interested in listening to more David Bowie, but this was not it.
All right, that was Scary Monsters and Super Creeps from David Bowie in at 443. The next album on the list is The Weeknd's Beauty Behind the Madness. This album is the second album by, I didn't know he was Canadian. Canadian singer-songwriter The Weeknd. That brings a whole nother twist to this.
Mm-hmm.
I'll talk about that later. He's Canadian.
Mm-hmm.
This was released on August 28th, 2015. It comes through EXO imprint of Republic albums. There's a lot of producers on this. Kanye has one on there. He produces a couple of the other names. Max Martin is on this one. That's probably the if I had to guess, I'll check it. Maybe we'll check my thinking. I bet Max Martin did Earned It from 50 Shades of Grey with him. But uh, this is, did I say it's his second album? It won best contemporary best urban contemporary album and was nominated for album of the year at the 58th Grammy Awards. So this is a Grammy winning album.
Hmm.
Kyle, do you think this deserves to be a Grammy winning album?
I don't know. I honestly, I don't know. This is one of those. This is another one of those that I don't have much context or reference for.
Mm-hmm.
I struggled at first just trying to place it in terms of genre because there was
Mm-hmm.
a lot going on that kind of pulled from a lot of different places. And, I guess it's essentially, R&B, soul, pop soul sort of thing, like new wave pop soul R&B kind of thing, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I just wasn't sure what to make of it at first. It was inoffensive, but nothing really stuck out to me. And the thing that I kept coming back to was, it's not Maxwell. Like, that was the closest thing that I have, like, in my own, catalog of music in my head at the moment. That's the closest comparable thing that I have for this. And that Maxwell album is just, to me, a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
As I got going, though, I kind of came around to it. I did end up recognizing a couple of songs,
Mm-hmm.
the Hills and Can't Feel My Face. I
Mm-hmm.
knew those and kind of came around to them.
Mm-hmm.
And what I realized was he was pulling a lot, like a lot, from Michael Jackson, from especially like the bad era Michael Jackson. He was and the more that I focused in on that, the more I kind of liked what I was listening to. But even the things like there was some really strong, very strong, like overdriven, distorted guitar solos in there that were really pretty cool that you wouldn't think would necessarily fit into an R&B song from an album like this that ended up actually sounding really pretty cool. So I ended up kind of in a spot where I was moderately okay with this album. Like it's not one that I'm going to really go back and listen to repeatedly, but and I think kind of the opposite of the Apple album, this to me felt back end heavy. Like nothing at the beginning
Mm-hmm.
really caught me until about halfway through. Then it kind of turned up, and I don't know if that's because the back end of this album is actually better, or if after I made that Michael Jackson connection for myself, I started to appreciate it more. I'm not sure. I don't know. Shameless is a great song. I'll go back and play that here and there. There's some stuff that I liked about it for sure.
Mm-hmm. I was wrong about the Max Martin producing this song from 50 Shades of Grey earned it. He didn't do that one.
Hmm.
Um, I this was an album where I actually had a problem with the lyrics, and I really struggled on why, because a lot of his lyrical content was very similar to SZA's, in its
I had that. Yeah.
explicitness, which
I'm
yeah,
interested. I'm
which I
interested to
didn't
hear what you have to
mind.
say here because yeah, I kind of went down that same route.
I didn't mind it, like, it wasn't, oh, my fragile constitutions. I didn't care about that. I really struggled with, why did I appreciate it in SZA's album but not like, why were they my least favorite parts of this one? I don't know, maybe he just felt like grossly braggadocious in some parts.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's just weird. Like, this is the part that I was thinking of when I said he's from Canada. He kept referencing my city, which, is a common sort of thing, right? What city? Like, I don't know. Maybe I'll figure it out. What city are you talking about? Like, because I thought he was like from Florida or something like that. That says he's born in Toronto. Okay, so he's from the six. Good for him. But keeping along our themes of maximalist, this album in general isn't a maximalist album to me. In fact, it does lean on that R&B kind of smoothness in a lot of places, except for the hills. I don't know why. I love that big 808, like
Hmm.
we talked about distortion earlier. And it's always been, I mean, it's one of the hallmarks of that song. Like, that is one that you would put on if you wanted to blow somebody's clothes off with a subwoofer, right? I love that about that song, which I don't know why. I love that.
I was listening to this
Um,
album sitting at my son's wrestling practice, sitting out in the parking lot while he was in practice, and I put this album on to listen through. And the way the speakers in my truck just rattled
yeah,
when that
it's fun.
song came on. I was like, man, that's okay. Yeah.
It's fun. Um, I mean, and the other singles are great. Can't Feel My Face is great. Earned It, like I've said, I've talked about it before. The song off 50 Shades of Grey. I mean, that's just a sexy, like, R&B banger. That one's going to be around for a long time. Um, yeah, I thought it was cool. I mean, this album has Ed Sheeran on it, Lana Del Rey on it, produced a song, at least one song produced by Kanye. So it's got some names on there. Um, yeah, it was all right. It won some awards for sure. Like I said, it won a Grammy. It charted really, really well. It's interesting. I was just flipping through there, and I definitely saw some um, influences by Michael Jackson in Bad. Yep, there you go. Nailed it. Yep. Um, yeah, I mean, like I said, it did really well. It won a bunch of albums. I mean, not just the Grammy. It won Billboard Music Awards, Juno Awards. Um, it set a Guinness World Record for most streamed album in 1 year at the time of its release in 2017.
Huh.
Yeah, interesting.
Interesting.
It won an American Music Award, so this album was a big commercial success. And I would say, unlike the Bad Bunny album, I have more appreciation for this album on the list, I think, than the Bad Bunny one.
Mm-hmm.
The musicality of this one, in my mind, again with my palette, I think is what does it for me.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So
what'd you score this one?
I gave it what did I give it? 2.5. And I was just thinking about what you were saying about the lyrics too.
Mm-hmm.
I they didn't bother me with SZA. Like you kind of appreciated them on her album. They didn't bother me on her album. They did bother me a bit on this album, like you were saying
Mm-hmm.
too. And again, not from a prudish, like, how dare you use
Mm-hmm.
those words, sort of, like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
care. But I think what bothered me, it was more that it annoyed me because it felt like
Mm-hmm.
it felt very juvenile. It felt like what like a 14-year-old kid would write a song
Yeah,
about. Like
yeah.
it felt like, I
Like,
mean,
who
at
are you
least,
saying this to?
yeah, like at least with
Yeah, maybe
SZA,
that's what it is.
like with SZA, it felt like it fit. Like she had a purpose for the lyrics that she was putting in there. This just, yeah, like
Maybe
you
that's
said,
what it
yeah.
is. Maybe in SZA's album, it seems like she's talking to her partner,
Hmm.
right? Whoever that is.
Yeah.
In most cases, seems like a male. Um, this one, it seems like he's in the locker room saying shit to his friends,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Like
Right.
it's.
And you don't believe it.
I mean, clearly, yeah, clearly there's some female facing aspects to some of these lyrics and stuff, but yeah, it's like what are you talking about? Like your city and like this is what happens in your city and oh, you're about to get faded in your city and like okay,
Yeah.
I do, maybe that's what it is. I'm glad we unpacked that. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
I don't know.
I would give this one. I mean, for as much as I love a couple of those songs, and I think that's what carries it, I'd give this one probably. I don't know, like somewhere along a 3, maybe a 3.5, because some of those good songs are just really fun.
Mhm.
But I'd probably a 3, a low 3 is where I'm at with it.
Hmm.
Yeah. Did we miss anything?
Nope. I think we got it.
Perfect. That was The Weeknd's Beauty Behind the Madness in at 442. All right, Kyle, the last album we're going to talk about tonight is the 441st greatest album of all time. This one threw me for a loop. I'm shocked it was on here. This is the album Blackout by Britney Spears. This is her 5th studio album. It was released on October 25th, 2007, which, if memory serves, is after the head shaving incident. So she's kind of piecing it back together there. This album is 43 minutes and 30 seconds long. I don't need to go through the genres for Britney Spears because this is a Britney Spears album. There's a bunch of producers, as is usually the case. Cara Diaguardi is on there. I think she was a judge on American Idol for a while. She's a songwriter, and the Neptunes are on there, so I appreciate that. Yeah, Kyle, what'd you think of this one?
Well, you said this is a Britney Spears album. I would disagree, at least a little bit. This
All right.
this took me a little bit by surprise because it's a lot more mature than this is not Baby One More Time. This is not Oops, I Did
Fair.
It Again. Uh,
Fair.
there's a bit more going on here that I actually kind of came away appreciating this album. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not laughing at you. It's just it's unexpected. So, I mean, this is the last album of the day, and I haven't played the card yet. So, FMK this thing right
All
now.
right. All
Which
right.
what song are you
Okay.
hooking up with? What song are you marrying? And which song are you axing?
All right. Oh boy. All
This
right.
is
So that
Britney Spears Blackout FMK. Here we go.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess the F, there are Hmm. I could take that very literally. I think I'm going to take that very literally. Uh,
Okay.
I'll go with Get Naked. That's
In parentheses, I got a plan.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Um,
That's the sexiest song on there. Sure. Got
it
it. Which
it
one are you
really. I mean,
marrying?
it really is. So I'm gonna marry. Oh, okay. So this song, and I realized I don't know. You may say this doesn't count. I don't care. I'm gonna count it. The version of the album that I listened to, I didn't realize that this was like a bonus track, but on the
Hmm.
version that I had that's on YouTube Music, that first song, Gimme More, at the end of the album,
Hmm.
there's the Junkie XL dub. I
Hmm.
rocked the hell out to that song. I really enjoyed that. That's the one that I would, out of every Britney Spears song
Oh,
that I
that's
know,
amazing.
that's the one that I would keep out of all of them. And then
Wow.
Kill. All that being said, there's still some songs on this album. It's not a like banger after banger straight hits album. There are some songs that I would
Hmm.
kill on here. I'd say kill Hot as Ice. It's just
Shots fired.
yeah.
I, I okay. So the song on this album that you would marry is "Give Me More," the Junkie XL dub version, but you didn't like the Lady Gaga album.
So I have that in my notes. I
Okay,
have,
good. Explain
but
yourself.
no.
Yeah.
Remember, I didn't dislike the Lady Gaga album. I just didn't feel
Sure.
like as an album it was consistent start to finish.
There.
The
Okay.
only thing I didn't
All right.
like, the only thing I didn't like about that album was You and I. I don't like that song. um, I the
Okay.
the
All right. Well,
very the
let the
very
record show. Yeah.
the very first note that I have in my notes on listening to this was I can hear how this leads to Lady Gaga. This
Okay.
album in particular, like this is a lot more of that. Uh, and that's why I say it, like this isn't Baby One More Time. It's not Oops I Did It Again. This is a lot darker, a lot more dance. Electronic. There's a lot more production to it. Um, it's I used the word dangerous with Lady Gaga. Like it just feels
Okay.
like it
Okay.
just gives a vibe of being dangerous. And I kind of got that from this too. I would say kind of similar to the Weekend album that we just talked about. The lyrics on this album, meh. Like they felt a little juvenile. They felt a little unnecessarily gratuitous. Like
Hmm.
almost like I'm not a teen pop star anymore. I'm gonna say these words now, sort of thing.
Hmm.
So I didn't.
Hmm.
I mean, it's not a 5-star album for me by any means, but I I I appreciated it as a change in trajectory for her at that point in her career.
This album did nothing for me. Like absolutely nothing. To the point where I don't even have a strong opinion on it. I just did nothing. My one take, which I enjoyed, was that song you were most attracted to, "Get Naked," in parentheses, I got a plan. I feel like that should really be reversed. Like you don't tell someone, "Get naked, I got a plan." Like no, you
Yeah,
say, "Hey, I got a plan. Get
getting it.
naked." Right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
don't lead with "Get naked." People are already like, "No, no, no, you want to put people's mind at ease." "Hey, I got a plan. Let's get naked." Um other than that one thing I saw is that and I think this is my criticism of Britney Spears as an artist, I guess. And it's not fair to her. I fully recognize this. She was used as a commodity in her early career, a vocalist that was given boxed songs to sell records,
hmm
sexualized, all that stuff, right? That's we don't need to dissect all that here. She's I distinctly remember seeing, like, I think she did a concert video, something like that, a recorded concert. And I remember her sitting behind a piano for a piano ballad and them not showing her hands because she wasn't playing it,
Right.
right? And her hands aren't even moving. It's just like what are we trying to do here? So I don't have a lot of respect for her. But again, that's not fair. Like she's a performer, and I recognize that. As a music fan myself, I appreciate when an artist like can sing the songs. And we've talked about how some of these albums on here have been mostly cover songs. So I feel like I've been fair to those, right? I've called those out. She's got writing credits on one, two of these songs in the original release. Interestingly enough, T-Pain has a writing credit on Hot as Ice. We talked about him last episode. So I just have a harder time kind of like really getting into this for what it is, because at the end of the day I look at this and go, in my opinion, these are other people's songs sung by her, and I don't think she's a great vocalist. So
I would
I don't
fully
know.
agree with that. I don't care for her voice really at all.
Yeah.
And as much as I gave this somewhat positive comments there, like my the score that I settled on isn't necessarily positive. Like it's not a
What did
positive
you
score.
settle on?
2.5.
You gave it a 4.5?
No, two and a half. And I think, because I brought her up last week as well when we were talking about that Lord album for a lot of the same reasons that you were just talking about. Like when I think of pop music, to me, my brain goes to that, you know, the pop music that was big when we were younger, the 90s bubblegum pop, the Britney Spears and Mandy Moore and Christina Aguilera and the boy bands and that sort of thing, where it is much more of a commodity than an artistic expression. I think what I'm saying with
Mhm.
this album is that I appreciate that this album in particular seems to be her trying to take a little bit more command of her image and her, the artistic expression of what she wants to be as a performer, more than just this is the persona that you have to sell records and posters for teenage boys' walls and that sort of thing. I appreciate. I think to say all that is to say that I appreciate this album. I don't necessarily like it, but I appreciate it.
Mhm. Yeah, I didn't like it. I give it a 2. I don't need to hear it again. Great. That was Britney Spears' album Blackout at 441. All right, that's the end of our album review, but we end each episode with a I've got one better, or alternately titled Let's Up the Ante. So the premise, if you're just joining us, is that some of these albums we don't know why they're on the list. They didn't resonate with us, and we think the list would be better served with a replacement. Kyle, do you have a replacement this week for Got One Better?
Ooh, that serves me up really nice. So, uh, I do have a replacement, and the name of the replacement is Jay-Z Replacement, which is
Oh, funny.
which
That was
is
not planned.
which for me is going to replace the Alice Coltrane album. I had said that
Okay.
Alice Coltrane album to me was a museum piece that kind of set the scene, set the stage for some of the jazz stuff that I like now. The a little bit more eccentric, interesting, and challenging stuff that I like to listen to every once in a while when I have the mental capacity to do that sort of thing.
Hmm.
And Jay-Z Replacement is exactly that. They had an album there. It is a
Can I pause you for a second?
yeah.
Can I pause you for a second?
Mhm.
Just for our listeners, this is not Jay Z as in Hove, put your diamonds up.
Right.
This is Jay Z, the artist, the letter J and Z.
Yes. Correct.
Jay Z replacement. Yeah.
Jay-Z
So, all
Replacement.
right,
Yep.
good. Keep going.
It's this album called Disrespectful. And they are basically a drummer and a saxophonist, and that album features a bass player, and it's just the three of them: jazz, saxophone, drum, and bass, and it is wild and a lot of fun, interesting songs to listen to. A lot of very syncopated rhythms that are matched between the drums and the saxophone that are it's wild to listen to think that people can put together music like that.
Hmm.
Which
If you had one song to recommend for people to check out, what would it be?
Displacement A, the first song on the album.
Okay.
It's I'm looking at it on YouTube Music right now, and it's got 92 plays on YouTube Music. I I bet I'm 80 of them. I bet I'm 80
It's
of
really
them.
funny because as you were saying this, I was trying to find them. They don't have a Wikipedia entry.
No.
This album came out in 2020. Um, with a name like that, it's hard to find, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like if you named your band Cash, like it's going to be hard to find where you are.
Yep.
It's just so. Or there was that other album. Jay is the other another band that like how are you supposed to find that? Like
Yeah.
that's a keyboard command. Um, anyways, all right. Well, I'll check that one out. Nice. All right. So my entry for this one um, is replacing the Otis Redding album. I mentioned that one of the reasons I didn't gravitate towards that was because it reminded me of other songs I liked better. And the one that I had so much fun this week listening to was Wilson Pickett's, specifically the song "Land of a Thousand Dances," but his album "The Exciting Wilson Pickett." Wilson Pickett was an artist that was around the same time. One of his mentors, or some of his mentors, were Sam and Dave. That "Hold On, I'm Coming" sort of
Mm-hmm.
Blues Brothers, like that when it would go on to inspire acts like Blues Brothers and stuff like that. But man, that "Land of a Thousand Dances," do you know that one?
No, I don't.
You would know it if you heard it.
Okay.
That's a song that every high school pep band plays, like with the na 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 na
Oh yeah.
na na na
Yep.
na na.
Yep.
Like it has that in there, and it's just so fun. And my oldest daughter and I ran some errands this weekend, and I played it for her. And we were just grooving in there, and she was laughing, and she thought it was so fun because he's got that call and response. He sings the na nas, and he says, I'm need your help one more time," and so Evan's like her eyes are lighting up, and then he has this way of saying things like he says put your hands on your hips, but the way he says put your hands on your hips, so Em again was walking around like saying hips, put your hands on your hips, like all weekend. It was just so fun to share that with her. And it's a song that my dad always talked about. It's an interesting title and an interesting premise. He also did "In the Midnight Hour," which is on that record, which is a great one. "Mustang Sally" is his other really well-known song, but it's on a different album. So I would take down that specific entry, the complete and unbelievable dictionary of soul from Otis Redding, and I would replace it um, with "The Exciting Wilson Pickett" for this list.
Good stuff.
Yeah. All right, Kyle. So next episode, we'll get a little bit further down the list, obviously. It looks like another really eclectic mix. It looks like we've got some early punk, some 90s rap, some 90s alternative, some soul, some country. It looks like it'll be a pretty good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited. We got Ursher on there too. That'll be interesting. And some alternative from the 2000s. So yeah, that'll be a good one. All right, we all set?
I think so.
Kyle and Tyler out. Nailed it.
Hey, thanks for watching. We'd love to hear what you think of these albums, so let us know in the comments. Do you approve these grooves? And as always, a quick thumbs up helps a lot. Subscribe so you can see all 500 albums, and we'll see you on the next record.